What's up, scrubs? Today we have another 10 tips and tricks video. The star of the day belongs to Caustic. Caustic can be tricky to play if you don't know what you're doing, but the scrubs have come together and provided some great tips for you that may make you a better Caustic player. So grab your controller, sit back, and get ready to learn. Let's go. Starting out with an overlook of Caustic's abilities, Caustic's passive is called Nox Vision. This allows Caustic and only Caustic to see enemies through his gas. This is incredibly useful, especially in tight quarters, but more on that soon. Quick side note, Caustic can only see the enemies if they are in the smoke and taking damage. The moment they leave the gas, the highlights disappear. The passive also does not work on other Caustics, so watch out. Next is Caustic's Tactical. Caustic's Tactical is called Nox Gas Traps. These are what make Caustic a great defense legend, but also a terrifying offensive legend if used properly. The traps can be dropped at a short distance in front of you and can be activated after a moment either by proximity or by being shot. And last is Caustic's ultimate ability, Nox Gas Grenade. This blankets a large area in Nox Gas, which has a cooldown of 3 minutes. It's deployed just like throwing a grenade, and it explodes on impact, creating a large cloud of Nox Gas. The damage dealt with the ultimate has changed many times over past seasons, but the damage is currently 5 damage per second and increasing by 1 every 2 seconds. Alright, before moving on to tip number 2, here's a reminder to smash that like button and leave a comment, and also subscribe to the channel. Remember, we are on our way to 500 subscribers, and once that goal is reached, another subscriber wins it big. Alright, on to tip number 2, knowing Caustic. It's important to know more about your legend, and you do that with time, so hopefully this can help you save some time on that. Caustic is the third largest legend in the game under Newcastle and Gibby. Caustic does receive the Fortified perk, where incoming damage is reduced by 15%. Plus, according to Season 16, which is out right now Caustic is not slowed by bullets. So that's a huge buff. The difference between Caustic and Newcastle and Gibby is that Caustic doesn't really have anything to stop incoming damage like the other two do. Gibby has a dome and Newcastle has a deployable shield. Caustic is just as large and takes the same damage, so it's important to know that Caustic is an inside monster, but an outside target. Alright, tip number 3, how to gas. Here's a quick synopsis on how to gas as Caustic. Caustic traps can be stacked on top of each other almost infinitely. Make use of this however you see fit. If they don't have open space above them, they will not inflate. And again, the Tactical and Ultimate are deployed similar to how a grenade is thrown. So now moving on to some serious tips and tricks using Caustic's abilities. Tip number 4 is planning. Because Caustic is so large of a target, it is important to know that you can't just go out in the open all willy-nilly and start trying to do Caustic things and expect not to be shot first by the enemy team. Planning is crucial. Drop some traps behind you as your team is moving through the map so that they can act as landmines and you can know if someone is trying to flank you. If you decide to bunker down in a room or an area, make sure your team is all on the same page. You can easily lock your teammates out of a building, getting them killed. Tip number 5, Caustic Traps. Here are the basics to Caustic's traps. The gas damage from the barrel is 5 damage per second and increases by 1 every 2 seconds. The gas traps take a moment to inflate after being placed, during which then they can be shot and destroyed by the enemy team. While you can have up to 6 traps placed at a time, you can only hold 3 charges of the ability. However, you can pick up unused traps to regain a charge. Caustic traps also can take up to 150 health before being destroyed. Alright, getting into the techniques with Caustic, now we have tip number 6. Moving into tip number 6, door blocks. Blocking doors with the traps is crucial to Caustic gameplay. Even if you have to run inside to heal, you can prevent the enemy from coming right through that front door, which gives you some time to get yourself together. The average number of doors inside a building is approximately 4 depending on the map, so having up to 6 traps can be useful when trying to lock down a building. And if the building has more, this is why you have other teammates. Try to put Caustic traps on the opening edge of a door so that they can't be shot by enemies. Another idea is to block enemies from leaving the building. Use your Caustic traps to block the door, keeping them from leaving the building, and then it's like shooting fish in a barrel. Speaking of shooting barrels, moving on to tip number 7, shoot your barrels. Shooting your barrels is a great tip for Caustic because it eliminates the possibility of the enemies one-shotting your barrels, making them useless. This is great for creating smoke screens for your teammates, similar to how Bangalore smoke works. And remember, if the enemies are inside your gas, you will be able to see them clearly. So here's a technique, something we like to call the peppering technique. All this is when you throw out all of your Caustic traps in an area around you as fast as possible and shoot them. This will usually stop the enemy from pushing, or it'll help you avoid some damage. This is also good for creating a distraction when in the midst of gameplay. Moving on to tip number 8, using traps for cover. Remember when I said Caustic doesn't have anything to stop incoming damage like Gibby or Newcastle? Well, this is the best we have with Caustic, and that's using his traps for cover. Caustic traps can take up to 150 damage from enemies, so this can be used to extend coverage in open areas for yourself or teammates. And basically this is the most useful in open areas of the map where Caustic is basically a sitting duck. If enemies begin to push, just drop some traps, maybe even shoot them and play cover from the traps. Caustic can see over his own traps as well, which is a huge advantage in a one-on-one. You can use this technique to be aggressive and push instead of fleeing. Throwing one at a time to slowly push an enemy is useful, and it's pretty fun. Tip number 9, ultimate ability. The Mandalorian tank of the Scrubs uses Caustic the most, and I can tell you that most of the time, he uses the ultimate as a panic button. When you are being pushed by an entire team or sometimes multiple teams, it is easy to just drop the ultimate at your feet and hope for the best. Bunker busting. When enemies are inside a building, you can run them out by just throwing your ultimate inside, and if you were smart, you would have locked them in using your Caustic traps. The ultimate can also be used as a smoke screen for confusing enemies, similar to how Bangalore smoke works. Nox gas destroys enemy traps such as Watson fences and rampart shields. Be aware of Watson's ultimate before deploying yours, because otherwise you won't be deploying it. As a side note, try throwing your ultimate in Bangalore smoke. If you can't see them, then make it to where you can. And finally, tip number 10, comboing with other legends. Caustic is more of a team player than most. Throw out traps for your teammates, shoot them, creating smoke screens, creating cover when needed. Very teammate-like. Because of Season 16, they have added Caustic to Controller, where he can now scan and find out where the final ring is going to be so he can set up. It's actually really useful. Seer, Bloodhound, and Crypto are good legends to team up with. A movement-based legend is key. This will help Caustic become more mobile and not so much of a target out in open areas. And the last tip here is to give up digi threats. What I mean by that is, you don't need them necessarily. You can see through your smoke. Give them to your teammates who can't. Well, that's all we have for you today, guys. I hope you enjoyed and learned something today. Don't forget to hit that like button, and also comment down below which legend you want to see in our tips and tricks guide next. So until next time, guys, have a good one.